Hi everyone, I am once again participating in the weekly chat hosted by James, DVD Collector 1974, and Ian, Forkerball. I had the pleasure of watching both their videos and Luke's video yesterday, Luke Razorwire Reviews. So I'll leave the links to their videos in the description below and any other people who I come across that are participating in this chat. I was lucky enough to have one of my own little queries as part of the discussion. I'll get to that in a second. One of the questions that they asked was about Blu-ray packaging, and there's two different kinds of cases, one of which is sort of a squared off corners, the other one has rounded off corners, and I think the squared off corner is definitely better because it allows more room for a label on the side so you can read the title more easily. Yeah, it's just easier that way. I'm the kind of guy that prefers something a little bit thicker and more substantial in the case. That doesn't just apply to DVDs, it applies to like phones as well. I don't like really small, thin phones because they're just too hard for me to hold. I like something a little bit thicker and sturdier. That's just me. There was also a question about has YouTube, in particular people on YouTube, expanded your horizons as far as the kinds of movies that you seek out. And while I do have recommendations that I take from other people, particularly the guys on the collab channel I'm on, Movie Reviewers 100, we do this thing every once in a while, what we call Haven't Seen It Week. And normally what happens then is I take recommendations from the other guys that they've talked about in their videos. Actually, really recently, we were talking about heist movies. That was our theme recently, and one of them, the one that EJ Puckbond 007 recommended, was an older Sean Connery Donald Sutherland movie called The Great Train Robbery, which I'd never seen. In fact, I'd never even heard of. So I took the opportunity to check that out, and I'm really glad I did. But aside from that, there aren't I basically read a lot online about movies, and so I get recommendations, and I learn about potentially interesting films from all over the web. There are a number of sites that I visit nearly every day, learning about stuff that's coming out that I might not have heard of. And on YouTube, occasionally I do come across a trailer for something that I've never even heard of. Yeah, YouTube itself is not necessarily where I get a lot of recommendations from. It comes from all over the web. It comes from reading, mostly you know, those particular sites that are voted to film news. You know, I also, you know, still go and look at magazines and what have you, and read the paper. We've got a paper here in Chicago called The Reader, and every week it has a, you know, sort of capsule description of all the movies that are playing in theaters during the week, no matter how small. Even if it's a movie from like 50 years ago, it's playing in one little theater, they'll do a little write-up on it. So that's very helpful as well. So again, you know, I do get recommendations for films, and I learn about a lot of films from a lot of different places. YouTube is just one of them. So it isn't necessarily something where YouTube has been like, oh my goodness, I've learned about so many new movies on YouTube, because I learn about them pretty much everywhere. Now the question that I submitted, and that James and Ian were nice enough to comment on, was about the new Ghostbusters movie, and I was surprised that they were so adamant against it not being made. Of course, I'm not. I know where they're coming from as far as remakes go. There have been a couple remakes recently, Total Recall and RoboCop, for example, that I wish really didn't exist, especially since it's the exact same title, and now I have to always distinguish between one Total Recall and the other. If I'm talking about Total Recall, I always have to refer to it as the original or the one from 1990, and the same with RoboCop, and that's a pain in the neck. Actually, Lunaria Claire talked about that recently. She was looking through her, I don't know, Netflix or something like that, and found Total Recall, and it turned out to be the Colin Farrell remake, which she wasn't all that crazy about. But the new Ghostbusters movie hasn't even started shooting yet, and they've been talking about making this movie for a while, but there seems to be a little bit more steam picked up lately. In the past few days, Bill Murray has sort of commented on the possibility of there being an all-female Ghostbusters team. And the way I understand it is that Paul Feig, the director of Bridesmaids and Heat, who obviously makes these very sort of female-centric films with lots of, you know, prominent female characters, would do a version of Ghostbusters that would have basically a new team, kind of like Ghostbusters The Next Generation, sort of taking over for the old one. Possibly Dan Aykroyd or one of the people from the original movie would make a brief appearance, but it would be on a new team of scientists, all of whom happen to be women, who take up the mantle of ridding New York City of pesky paranormals. Of course, Bill Murray has talked about the fact that he doesn't want to be part of any new Ghostbusters movie, and the guys who have listened, whose videos I've watched already, were like saying, there's no point in making another Ghostbusters movie unless you can get the original team. There's no point unless you can get all 4 guys back, and especially Bill Murray. And you know what? I mean, it would be great if he could come back, but he's not going to do it. It's not going to happen, okay? He doesn't have an excuse for not being alive anymore, like Harold Ramis. He just doesn't, feel like it's a good idea. But he did like the idea of having a all-female Ghostbusters team. He said it was as good as an idea as any that he's heard. And so why not take that as an endorsement? I mean, maybe the new Ghostbusters movie won't be as funny or as good as the original. It'll certainly be different, that's for sure. Yeah, I sort of look at it like Star Trek The Next Generation. There's plenty of people that love both the new and the old Star Trek. And it's not like Next Generation has made everyone forgot about the original cast. I mean, people still hold up Wrath of Khan as the best Star Trek movie, and they love a lot of those older episodes. So I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing. I've also actually read recently, I discovered a writer named Scott Mendelson, who writes for a website called Forbes, and he was talking about how great it would be to have an all-female Ghostbusters team, because the roles for female actors, female characters in the big budget event movies, sci-fi, fantasy, what have you, are so few and far between. I mean, almost all the Lord of the Rings movies have very few female characters. The Star Wars, Star Trek movies have only a small number of female characters in it. And they're largely, focused more on male characters, with women sort of being on the side. And it would be great, he said, to have a movie that's highly anticipated, that a lot of people will be interested in seeing for its fantasy elements, but are devoted mostly to women characters, which would be really great. And I got to say, I like seeing movies with large female casts. It's nice, it's great. I really like it a lot. My question that I posed for the chat was, if they do make an all-female Ghostbusters movie, or with a basically a core team of female Ghostbusters, who would be the actresses you'd like to see play those parts? And obviously it depends on the kind of characters they write, but I really like Jane's suggestion of Janine Garofalo. I haven't seen her much in movies lately. I'd love to see her get back into it, and have her that cynical, sarcastic kind of persona that Bill Murray has. Not as a Bill Murray replacement, but it's good to sort of have her be the one who's sort of like the non-enthusiastic, pessimistic type, and she's really good at that. James also expressed a lot of displeasure over the kinds of movies and the kinds of characters that Melissa McCarthy has played. And since Paul Feig is possibly going to be the one making this movie, it's sort of a foregone conclusion that Melissa McCarthy will be cast in the movie, because she was in Bridesmaids and Heat and the new movie that Paul Feig's made with Jason Statham. So yeah, I would like to see Melissa McCarthy play the Walter Peck part, the antagonist, because that's what she's good at. But of course, Melissa McCarthy is an actress. She doesn't always have to play an antagonistic, obnoxious character. She can play pretty much any part, and she can play, a perfectly sweet, nice character as well. So it really all depends on the character that she's playing. But if she were to play someone who is abrasive, then it would be good if she were the Walter Peck character, the person who isn't a Ghostbuster, who's giving them lots of trouble, bureaucratic trouble. And because the Ghostbusters themselves, they gotta be friends and get along really well, rather than people who are fighting each other. It's not the Avengers. It's not where you've got a whole bunch of specialized people that come together and don't get along but have to solve a mission. It's like they're all working together. and have been for a long time. That would be sort of the appropriate Ghostbusters thing. Couple people that I'd like to see in the movie outside of conventional comedian, comic actresses. Rosario Dawson, I think, is one of my favorite actresses, and she would be great in the movie. You know, she could be sort of like the upbeat person, the person who's always sort of the cheerleader for the team, like Dan Aykroyd was. And Michelle Monaghan is an actress I've been very fond of. There's no reason why she can't be funny as well. Anne Hathaway's been in a few comedies, I guess, that weren't all that great. But then again, she was sort of funny in The Dark Knight Rises as Catwoman. And it's important also that that the people that are picked to play these characters be believable as very intelligent people. You don't want to have, you know, ditzes or people whose forte is playing ditzes, like Anna Faris, for example, playing a Ghostbuster. That really wouldn't work. They're all very smart characters. James mentioned Tina Fey, and she would be perfect to play a Ghostbuster, you know. I also really like Sarah Silverman a lot. I don't think that she'd maybe be the best person to play a Ghostbuster, but she's very, very funny. Her humor is very R-rated for the most part. Not to say, you know, I mean, you know, it could still work. Chelsea Handler just lost her talk show. I think she's really funny. She would be good. I really like Leslie Mann and Judy Greer. Either of them could play, especially Judy Greer could play sort of like the more bookish type, you know, the one who spends all her time researching really and isn't as social as the other two, not as outgoing. Of course, I'm a big fan of Reese Witherspoon. She would be awesome. She's got a lot of comedy experience. And also Catherine Keener. Catherine Keener is another one of those people that does the withering put-downs really, really well. And to have her play one of that team would be really, really great as well. One of the guys mentioned Sigourney Weaver. It would be great to have Sigourney Weaver lead the Ghostbusters team. I don't think that she's a great choice because she's not a scientist. She is a musician. Dana, her character, is, you know, couldn't be part of the team. What would she do? I mean, she's not a scientist. That really wouldn't work as well. Yeah, having, of course, somebody like Ernie Hudson or Annie Potts or Rick Moranis appear in the movie would be nice, but I think Dan Aykroyd would probably be the best person from the original cast to appear in it, since neither Bill Murray nor Harold Ramis is going to be in it. That's my thoughts on it, really. Yeah, I'm interested in the movie, and I don't think that it would tarnish the legacy of the original, the first two movies with the original cast to make a new movie with a new cast. I mean, you know, look at the Star Trek reboot. You know, I mean, people still love Star Trek too. People still love those classic things and Next Generation, even though, you know, the new movies with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto are making, you know, a great deal of money now, and the next one will as well. So yeah, don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Again, think of it as Ghostbusters: The Next Generation rather than a total reboot or remake or what have you. Anyway, that's my take on it. I have one other question, actually, not movie related. But it just so happens that I'm posting this video on September 11. And I was just wondering if anyone wants to share with me if in some way they commemorate the attacks. I'm speaking, of course, mostly to my American movie fans here, fellow American movie fans. Yes, today is September 11, and it's been 13 years since the 9/11 attacks, and so I was just wondering if anyone out there has any particular way that they commemorate that. Anyway, that's just something, just putting it out there. Thanks very much for watching. Again, any people that have yet to put up their videos, as well as the guys that have already put up their videos on this chat, I'll leave the links in the description. Thanks very much for watching, guys. See you again soon. Bye.